mixed martial arts has never been as popular as it is today. Ever since the introduction of the women's divisions in the early 2010s, women's MMA has exploded in terms of popularity and the levels of competition. Many point to the likes of Ronda Rousey and before her, Cyborg, Gina Carano, and Miesha Tate as the pioneers of women's mixed martial arts, and they wouldn't be wrong in saying that whatsoever. But these women were walking a path that had been blazed for them a decade or so prior. That all began with a legendary one-night, all-women tournament in Japan. On December 5th, 2000, Remix World Cup 2000 was held at the Budokan in Japan. There were 12 fighters all competing for the grand prize of 10 million yen, which would be about 92,000 American in 2000, and in 2020 would be about roughly $140,000. At the time, established MMA fighters weren't making that much money for a night of fighting, so this legitimate prize money was enticing, and as such the promoters selected 12 fighters from around the world to compete, as well as one super fight, but more on that later. The event was put on by Neo Japan Ladies Pro Wrestling, as Japanese female wrestling promotions were the first to see the interest and draw for female mixed martial arts. The fighters ranged in size, experience, and varying martial arts styles, the largest competitor being 6'4", 320-pound Russian champion judoka Svetlana Gundarenko. Svetlana was the most decorated fighter, having won the very first ever female MMA tournament held in 1995 by Ladies Legend Pro Wrestling. She also is far and above the largest woman I've ever seen in my entire life. Becky Levy was considered the best female MMA fighter in the world at this point in time. She had fought in the first recorded female MMA fight in the US on March 28, 1997, picking up a TKO victory in the first round. She is a second Dan black belt in judo and had Dan Severn in her corner for this tournament. Erin Tuffhill, a pro boxer, made her debut earlier this year. She had fought 3 times prior to this tournament, going 2-1. She would later go on to fight the daughter of Muhammad Ali, Layla Ali, losing via TKO. The smallest competitor in the tournament was Megumi Yabushida, standing 5'2" and tipping the scales at 115 pounds. Megumi had a lengthy judo and pro wrestling career prior to the tournament and one prior MMA victory under her belt. The only name some of you may recognize in this tournament is Marloes Coenen. She had a lengthy MMA career that lasted up until 2017, but at this time she had just made her MMA debut earlier this year and was not added onto this event until just days prior and was only 19 at the time of this event. The rules for this tournament were strange to say the absolute least. Quarterfinals and semifinal matches were 2 5-minute rounds, while the super fight and the finals match were both 3 5-minute rounds. Obviously, there were no weight classes, and the wardrobe regulations were very relaxed. Kyoki Inoue wore her entire pro wrestling gear, face paint and all. Svetlana opted for a baggy gray t-shirt and blue sweatpants. The more conservatively dressed Marloes Coenen wore something approximate to what you would see nowadays in the octagon. The strangest of all these rules was the 20 seconds that was allotted to ground fighting before the ref would stand the fighters back up. I have yet to find an explanation online for the justification or the mindset behind this rule. From what I can assume, it is implemented to encourage exciting striking battles and limit stalemate ground battles with no chance of being restarted on the feet without rolling out of the ring. So this was their answer to the so-called Nevada rule UFC fans would become accustomed to. They also forbade strikes to the head while on the ground in those 20 seconds. Regardless of the bizarre fashion choices and rules, this event was wild. It just screams Japanese MMA in the 2000s. The varying skill levels of the competitors is pretty astounding at times. The fight between Junko Yagai and Floor Holman is a pretty sloppy and bizarre affair. Junko opted to throw standing hammer fists, which somehow bloodied Floor, who blatantly grabbed the ropes to avoid a takedown attempt, which resulted in no warning from the ref. Floor hurts her arm by blocking a punch, and the ref actually allows her cornerman to put her shoulder back into place and continue the fight, only for it to dislocate again in the second round, and that would be the end of the fight. There is some very clear and disturbing mismatches in competition. The most disturbing is the promoted super fight, and I use that term very loosely, between the 4-time national judo champion Tatiana Kovachinova and Japanese model and actress, yes I said that right, model, Atsuko Sakuraba, no relation to Kazushi Sakuraba. The Russian judoka mauled her relentlessly, threw her at will, secured an armbar, and snapped the model's arm before her corner could throw in the towel. All while Tatiana looked about as thrilled as someone watching the grass grow. Kyoki Inoue versus Svetlana was a battle of 2 giant female fighters. Inoue used the ropes as she would in a pro wrestling match to attempt to clothesline Svetlana, only to be caught and thrown to the ground and soccer kicked by Svetlana. At one point, Svetlana throws Inoue with a Uranagi and has a crossface on her. Inoue just straight up fucking bites her arm to get out from underneath her. The ref has to pry her mouth off of Svetlana's arm, and it only results in a yellow card warning. Right after this, Svetlana throws her yet again and finishes her with a scarf choke. Marloes Coenen was clearly the most skilled fighter in the entire tournament, breezing through her first round opponent, future MMA journeywoman Mika Harigai, in 31 seconds, after punching her in the face a few times, pushing her down, and taking her back with a rear naked choke. It was almost as if Hari was expecting Marloes to just let her stand back up if it was a kickboxing match. Coenen's next fight was against tournament favorite Becky Levy, and she submitted Levy in 1 minute 30 seconds via flying armbar. A year removed from Romina Sato hitting his legendary 5-second flying armbar, Marloes Coenen hits one of her own to advance to the finals. That brings us to perhaps the most shocking and unbelievable fights I've ever seen in my entire time as an MMA fan. Svetlana Gudenko versus Megumi Yabushita. David versus Goliath in female MMA. Yes, please. With a weight disparity of 205 pounds and a difference in a foot of height, this is hands down the most exciting fight of the entire tournament. This must be seen to believe. This was the first fight that made me dive into this event and create this video. This is a wild contest with Megumi using her speed and quickness to match Svetlana's power and weight advantage. Megumi takes full advantage of the 20-second ground fighting rule, and it's what saved her in this fight, that and Svetlana's stamina. Megumi manages to pick up the win via judge's decision. Like I said, you have to watch this fight for it to be believed. The final fight is perhaps the most competitive fight of the entire night. Marloes Coenen and Megumi Yabushita going back and forth on the ground, with the limited time they were allowed anyways. Marloes gets the better of the striking exchanges and the better of some of the scrambles, while Megumi threatens with many submissions in the match. Ultimately, it was Marloes Coenen who would walk away the tournament champion, $90,000 richer, and recognized as the first female MMA champion. The tournament is definitely not MMA like it is today. It is sloppy at times and comical at others. Besides the skill disparity, the 20-second ground fighting rule prevented many fights from being competitive and entertaining. The finals fight would have specifically benefited from a modern MMA rule set. In other cases, it saved fighters from being submitted. Megumi Yabushita survived 3 separate submission attempts in 2 different fights due to the 20-second rule. The judges' criteria for who wins a fight is non-existent, or at least I couldn't find it in any of my research, so clear-cut decisions are few and far between. We have no clue what the judges are looking for to score the fight. All the judges were associated with pro wrestling, with only one, Koichiro Kimura, having an actual fighting background, having competed in Vale Tudo Japan 1995. Apart from Kimura, the judges were incompetent, and that contributed to some controversial decisions. Personally, I think Svetlana beat Megumi Yabushita in their match, but that's just me using current MMA judging to score these fights, and we all know how screwy that is. Regardless of these critiques, this is considered by many to be the greatest female MMA tournament of all time. It made stars out of its competitors, notably Marloes Coenen and Megumi Yabushita, who became a legend in Japan after this tournament. This event put female MMA on the map in the combat sports world and the early Wild West days of mixed martial arts. The success of this event spawned Smack Girl Promotions, which continued to promote female MMA in Japan and eventually became Jules MMA, which still exists today. All these fights are available on YouTube right now at this very time. The fights may not be the quality you're used to, but this event is a must-watch for all mixed martial arts fans, not just the hardcore history buffs of the sport, but even the casual fans, to see where female MMA started and to see how far it has come today. I want to give a big shout out to @CatchWrestling on Twitter. He was the one who made me make this video in the first place. He had posted pictures and clips of this event, and I wanted to dive deeper into this to find out more about it, so go give him a follow on Twitter.